So, Eddie, I want to talk about Miracle at Manchester. It's an incredible story. You directed this film. You also star in the film. How did this cross your desk? How did you hear the story?
Well, first of all, Billy, thank you so much for having me this morning. It's a long, sordid tale. I moved to California back in after I graduated from college back in 1991. I came out here to sell corporate insurance for my uncle. I was a bit of a wild man and was not a very good insurance salesman. So my tenure at the insurance company ended after 6 months. Um, I kind of kicked around Hollywood for a while and ended up on the production on a production team as a production assistant. So I was a PA for a few years. Got to kind of understand, the set, how to, decorum on the set, what to do, what not to do. Someone said to me one day, you should really try being an actor. And
Had that crossed your mind to that point because you ended up stumbling kind of into Hollywood in that way? Had you thought about being an actor?
I mean, I auditioned for a thing in college. A buddy of mine was a film major, and he was like, "Okay, we're doing this, college film, but I need you to bring in a monologue." And I was like, "Oh, okay, what's that?" So I brought in I prepared the saltine scene from Jaws, Quint, the 65-year-old man where he does his fingers down the chalkboard and talks about going out and getting this shark. So completely inappropriate. But I didn't know what I was doing. And so, I mean, I had thought about it. I always loved film and television. That was one of the things that as a young man, my dad and I, we would go see films, and I loved Saturday Night Live and Carol Burnett and Tim Conway and all that stuff. And I know I'm aging myself, but so I decided, to try and curb my wild ways. I got clean and sober, and for the first time in my life, I decided, other than sports, that I was going to try and really give something my full attention, because of the fact that I was now newly clean and sober. Most of my friends I had to, you know, kind of walk away from that situation, and I got into acting class, and so for the next 2 years, basically all I did was go to class. I would go to class 2 or 3 times a week, and really started studying, and got started doing some national beer commercials, and things just started happening for me. I got really lucky, and started moving through my career. I think I've had 5 or 6 network shows and done pilot after pilot after pilot. So guest stars on 45 different shows or something like that.
I mean, you've had a crazy career, and it's interesting because you just talked about getting sober. I mean, you like so many other people, you could have gone one way or the other, right? I mean, you could have continued down the path of substances and alcohol, and we know where that leads for people. And especially in Hollywood, it's interesting to me, and I can't speak for you, so I'll let you do this, but that, you get clean and sober and then go into Hollywood. A lot of people in Hollywood struggle once they get in with sobriety. But before we even talk about that, was there something that motivated that for you? That decision to kind of clean up your act and get rid of substances and all of that. What drove that for you?
Death. I mean,
Yeah.
what are they? Hospitals, institutions, or death? Those are kind of the three ending points. And as a kid, it started off. You go out and party with your friends, and it just I took it too far. I knew I had taken it too far. My family knew that I had taken it too far. Um, I I had gotten tired of apologizing to everyone for a lot of different things. I had a lot of support from my sister and my dad and my mom, and I just they say you hit your rock bottom, and I got to the point where I was like, I feel inside my body that there's more to my life than what I'm giving it at this point. And the acting thing seemed like a viable. It became viable, and I didn't want to miss the opportunity. And so I gave it everything I had. And I did really, really well for a very long time. I think I got my first acting job. I was on Young and the Restless, I think at 27. So I started late. My manager, he said, there's no such thing as a guy who starts acting at age 27 that was like a former college wrestler who, it just, he always used to say I was a unicorn. And so for a very long time, things were going really well. I've gotten older, and Hollywood's changed a lot. Um, People are going to say this is a complaint when actually it's not really a complaint. It's just the way things are. Being an old heterosexual white male in Hollywood right now is kind of the low man on the totem pole. And so things were not, I was having an existential crisis. I wasn't providing for my family. And I was like, what else can I do to provide for my family in a manner that I have up to this point been able to do? And who's going to hire me to do what? Oh, hi, here's my resume, actor. So I applied to LAPD a couple years ago. I said, what can I do? At least I can help the community. And
Wow. So wait a minute. So you applied a couple of years ago to go into policing, by the way, at a time that's probably the hardest time to go into policing in light of where we are right now culturally and the things that have happened.
yeah,
So you and that's really unique. I want to dig into that because crazy successful career, but like you're saying, a lot of people, it's tough. Navigating Hollywood is really difficult. And everybody I talk to says the same thing. But so you make this decision, you go talk about what drove that, because that's a crazy, not in a negative way, a crazy in a positive way decision to make.
yeah. Like I said, I couldn't sleep at night. I was, depressed and anxious, and and I talked to my wife and I said, what can I do that when at the end of the day I can be proud of myself and I can look myself in the mirror and I can be of service. That's one of the tenets of sobriety, is being of service. And what can I do to make my sons proud? And at the end of the day, feel some pride, for myself. I've always been interested in law enforcement, and I just decided to do it. So I went downtown. They had this big seminar. There was about 150 candidates there. All of them were about 22 or 23, and I was the old man in the room. Went out and took the physical fitness qualifiers, which are, push-ups, sit-ups. Then you'd run a like 300 meter and then a mile and a half, and finished at the top of. I mean, I've always, like I said, I was a wrestler growing up, kind of a gym rat, so I did really, really well at the physical fitness qualifier. Then I took the personality test and scored a 97 on that. So things were moving along. Then I got into the background check which is very, very thorough. They started asking about drugs and alcohol, and I tend to be kind of glib, just in general, sarcasm I love, and I like being a little irreverent, and maybe on this particular application, I could have maybe not gone there. So, like they asked me a question: have you ever done drugs? If so, what drug did you do, and on what day did you do it? And I basically, as an overall kind of metaphor for how I answered these questions, I said I did drugs from 1981 till 1999, and basically, whatever somebody had, I would do it because that's who I was. And I got a letter back a few days later, and it said something about maturity. So if you know me, you would go, I get it. So my profile was scrubbed from the LAPD website. And then 2 days later, the riots started, and police officers were being Molotov cocktailed, and everybody hates the police, and the police are evil and racist and terrible, and my wife looked at me and she was like, I'm glad that it didn't work out.
But you were ready to do it. Would you have left acting entirely behind to do that?
I guess it would have just depended on my ability to audition if I could, my ability to hey chief,
Yeah. Gotta go. Were they aware as you were going through this application of who you were
I don't know.
and what you had
I
done?
don't know. I don't know.
I'm sure they were. I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting to me though, the commitment that you were willing to make to go and do that, because you could have chosen 30 other things that you could have done, and you were attracted to go there.
Really? Because I
And but
wish I'd have known. I wish I'd talked to you, because I didn't see the 30. I was like, what? I'm going to go. No, no, no throwing no shade on Home Depot, but I was like, what am I going to? Like, what? What? Oh, actor.
what am I going
Oh,
to
you're
do?
perfect for this.
Well, I think it's really interesting too, because I've known a lot of people who have been actors for a long time, and they've lived to a certain standard because their careers allowed them to, and then when things change, it's really stressful because your lifestyle is at a certain point, and in order to maintain the house, the things that you have, you need to keep those jobs coming in, and that's a really stressful piece of the puzzle. And that's just part of I guess the package of working in Hollywood. So from that point on, how did you kind of pick up the pieces and move forward?
Okay. Well, excuse me. I've been friends with Dean Cain for a bunch of years. We do
Good
conventions. We
guy.
do conventions together, and I called him up and I just said, "Hey, Dean, I know you do these off Hollywood, kind of faith based films, and if there's any way you can get me in there, I would appreciate it." Next day, Jason Campbell from JC Films called me. We had a pretty substantive discussion about just life and work and where I stood and felt about things, and um, we kind of hit it off. And he invited me to come back to Ohio. I'm from Ohio, and teach an acting class and to be in a couple of his first films. And uh, one day he just said to me, he goes, "Hey, listen, I love the way you are with actors, and the way you seem to get things out of actors and working with these people. And how would you feel about directing one of these films?" And I was flattered, I was nervous, excited, and I love working with actors. I love, like, seeing the lights come on, like giving somebody as a director, you never go, give me more, give me more, give me less. You instead, as the way I was taught, you connect it to something that's real in their own lives that they can relate to, so that when they're saying the words that someone else has written for them, they are connecting it to something that's real in their own life, which makes it more authentic. And so being able to do that um, is something I've always enjoyed. And so, it was, it just seemed like the right thing at the right time.
Yeah, that's incredible. And, you've been on so many shows, you've done so much in Hollywood. When you look at the general Hollywood way of doing things and you look at these stories that are being told increasingly, on Pure Flix and other places. I mean, Jesus Revolution was just a massive hit, right? So the audience is craving. I mean, there's such a massive audience for this content. But a lot of everything you had done was sort of in that mainstream sort of, purview. So when you look at what you've experienced so far in the faith and family friendly arena, what is kind of refreshing for you as an actor and as a director getting to do these kinds of projects and tell these kinds of stories?
Look, I mean, I don't want to throw shade on Hollywood. They do what they do, and they do it well. And the difference for me was, uh, the films that we're making are about hope and faith and, like, happiness and, struggle, and then but the ability to come out the other side, community. These are films that, at the end of the day, hopefully people feel like they have, it encourages them to wake up the next morning and still believe that, not to be overly hyperbolic, but, that life is still worth living, and there are good people out there, and there's still such a thing as community. And I want people to feel good. I mean, life is, like you said. I mean, the circumstances we're living in now, it's people are stressed out. They're stressed out about money. They're stressed out about the state of our union. They're stressed out about the state of our world. And so if I can if we can provide them a couple of hours to escape, and then at the end go, okay, all right, there's still good things to believe in. That's I think that's basically the
Yeah.
point.
Well, it's interesting too, because looking at Hollywood, I look, everybody has a worldview. They're going to try to push their worldview in what they do. That's life, right? And so when Hollywood has one worldview, which I tend to think it has one more secular worldview, that's the worldview they're going to tell their projects through. And I get that. I think what's happening now is other people with other worldviews are coming up and they're creating projects, right? They're making movies like Miracle at Manchester, like the movie you directed on Pure Flix right now, people can watch, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. But it is interesting because you're even seeing some actors, and I won't ask you to comment on this unless you want to, but Rainn Wilson was tweeting, a couple weeks ago that, Hollywood has an anti-Christian bias, so you're seeing people start to, even outside, these aren't Christians who are saying these things necessarily. They're people in Hollywood noticing maybe for the first time that maybe there is a group of people that haven't been, given, some kind of content that they can relate to. But beyond that, what you're talking about here, and then I'll let you comment on all of this if you want, you're talking about hope. And, there's so many projects out of Hollywood, movies, TV shows, you watch them and you're like, what was the point of that? Like, I'm leaving this project and I feel like I don't understand what I even watched for 2 hours. And to me, that's a problem for me. I'm not interested in that kind of content. I want to leave feeling something that uplifts me. So I'll throw it over to you on that. I know I said a lot of things
No,
there.
yeah, as you said, you can't help but, there is an agenda for. I mean, everything that we do is kind of maybe agenda driven. Um, um, the one thing about the films that we do, that, yeah, there's a faith component, there's a religious component throughout the theme of the films, but it's not dogmatic. It doesn't beat you over the head with, like, the if you don't believe what we believe, you're going to go to hell, or, um, pontificating about scripture and stuff like that. And that's not really my thing either. I mean, I'm a recovering Catholic. So the nuns were not very nice to me. And so, I didn't have a very high, um, opinion about just the whole religious thing for a very long time after that. So I'm very cautious about, I don't want to be preachy. I don't want to be involved in something that's preachy, and I don't think that's what this is. And I think when you make a film that's balanced, it still has a religious component, it still has a faith component. Um, I, I think for people who are kind of on the fence about it, maybe they'll be a little more open to it. Instead of saying you have to do this way, we're just saying, hey, there's plenty of really good people that feel this way, and perhaps consider a more spiritual path in your life, because especially as I get older, you start going, my sons are almost grown, they're almost out of the house, and I'm starting to go, okay, what's this all about? What am I doing here, and what's my purpose really? When you're younger, your purpose is to just run around and go nuts and have a good time. And as an old geezer now, there are other things for me to think about and to contemplate. And I just I feel a lot of the stuff that we're getting now, from Hollywood is, we're instead of story, they're more concerned with making sure all the boxes are checked for representation. And look, I want everybody to have a job, and I understand representation, and but it's a little, it feels, I just feel a little too manipulated by what I'm getting from Hollywood right now. And whatever, people are gonna hear me say this and say, whiny white guy actor, scrub, washed up. But it's just the truth. And there's a lot of people that feel the exact same way, but you can't really talk about it because there's a lot of whispers. Everybody's all they're whispering about what's going on, but you can't say it out loud, because if you do, you're a bigot or a racist or a homophobe or whatever. And
Well, it is interesting, and again, I'll say this from me, if you have 65% of the population saying they subscribe to a worldview, Christianity, whether they do or not, and yet none of those people tend to feel well represented at all in an entire industry. When we talk about representation, everybody wants to be represented, but it is interesting, it's selective representation in a lot of cases. And I think that's another problem that people have, and I do think it's good that people are coming up. And what you're talking about is storytelling that draws people in, right? It's not necessarily that you're getting hit with this message over and over. You're being drawn into a story, and you're seeing the attributes of that story, and it brings you back toward maybe an eternal truth, or toward even just in the family friendly side of things, towards a family friendly theme, right? There's a lot there to unpack. And I think you're right. It's hard to talk about, and it shouldn't be hard to talk about. People should be free to discuss these things without retribution. But do you feel like in Hollywood, that's something that even if people are feeling it, they just can't be open about it all?
yeah, no, I mean, even me saying this out loud is, you know,
is a potential problem, right? Yeah, I get that. Well, okay, so I want to ask you, because we've talked a lot about your background, your career, and then what things are like in Hollywood right now. But you directed this film, Miracle at Manchester, and this is a movie that deals with a real life story. It's based on a true story. It deals with brain cancer and this kid's incredible sort of journey. I mean, there's so much to this project. what for you is sort of your big hope in this film that audiences will take away?
Well, uh, so here's the thing. A couple years ago, my dad, as my career started to you know, fluctuate in the negative, my dad started saying, "Hey Eddie, I'm praying for you. I'm praying for you." And this was kind of a new thing. I was like, "Oh, well, thanks, Dad." And and so for me, I mean, there's a big God component in AA, and but to hear my father say that to me, who was my hero, my dad raised me by himself, and never gave up on me when I was going through my craziness, and it just kind of hit me, and made me can really kind of reconsider, um, my own personal spiritual path. Um, and so, what was the question again?
No, I don't even care about my question now because we'll come back to it because now I'm really interested in
Okay,
this
yeah,
part of your journey because I was asking about the film itself. And as you were starting to talk about your dad, and I want you to go back into that. I thought it was interesting because you were talking about purpose before, and your journey, and a couple of years ago where your career was, and what you're doing now. And I couldn't help but think that your purpose very much could be that God has you on this journey and is bringing you into this type of storytelling on purpose, and that the things in your career happened the way they happened for that very reason, so that you could be here talking now, right, about not just this film, but the other ones that you will be working on. But anyway,
yeah.
talk more about your dad
Okay,
and how that, yeah.
okay, yeah. Thank you. So I'm sorry. As I was speaking, I was like, "What was the question?" I've been up since 5:30, so
No,
I
I'm more interested in this now. So, and then we'll get into that.
okay.
So,
So my dad, started saying he was praying for me, and it made me kind of reconsider, my own spiritual path. My dad was very excited finally because he was like, "Dad, I'm going to direct this film," and he was really, really happy for me. And unfortunately, he passed right before we started filming. He was in hospice, and it was really hard. And but again, my dad never gave up on me. He was my hero, and then all of a sudden I'm directing this film about a dad and his love for his son. And um, and Heather Campbell, who's the other part of JC Films, who produced this film. She's very strong in her faith. She's been through a ton of diversity and hardship in her own life, but she's still strong in her faith. And I started asking questions. I started kind of using her as my own little spirit guide. And what we came up with is that the theme that kept happening over and over during the filming of this film was, "Eddie, there are no coincidences. This is all part of the journey." And after my dad died, everybody told me that you'll see your dad is still here, your dad is still with you, he's around you, you can talk to him. And I want to believe that, because I don't want to lose my dad. I want to believe that he's still around me. So I'm making a conscious choice to kind of go there and believe that there's more to, um, just you're alive and then you're dead. you know um, and so things started. I mean, the fact that this film was about a father and his son, that wasn't a coincidence. And I was able to bring my experience with my own father and apply it to what was happening with Rick and Bryson in this film. And there's just this movie. We made this movie with love. We made this movie with community and with faith and belief that there is something bigger than us. And so that's been probably the biggest change for me working with JC Films. And I'm a Midwestern Ohio guy, and we said prayers before we sat down to eat dinner, and it comforts me. It just does. I like the idea of the communal process of everybody saying, okay, we're here to serve a greater purpose and to try and reach out and touch that thing and make contact with it.
Yeah, I mean, and at the end of the day, it's so interesting to me, and so sorry for your loss with your dad. You have that loss happen. You're making this film about a father and a son, like you were saying. There's no coincidence there. And you end up telling this incredible story of hope in Miracle at Manchester. And when you look back at the project, and maybe there's somebody watching right now, they're going to go and watch it. What is your big hope for what they are thinking and feeling once they finish the film?
There's a lot of sadness in this film. It's a tough road for this kid. It's a tough road for the dad. But and their faith is tested. You know, and At the end of the film, we see that, as I said earlier, there's still community out there. There are still people that are drawn together through their faith and through their own compassion, and like real humans, like humans you want to actually spend time with. And I mean, we just wanted to tell a story. It says a lot of times in films that when they say based on a true story, about this much of it is the truth, and then the rest is all kind of made up.
Is Hollywood.
This I spent 2 weeks with Bryson and his dad Rick. Every morning, Rick picked me up for work, so we got to talk a lot. And this man is incredibly dedicated to his son. And I mean, instead of walking out of a movie and going, it's the end of the world, you want to get up in the morning and push forward and keep going, and know that there are people out there that are still, compassionate and loving, people of faith who are willing to, reach out to someone else to help, without any strings attached, just because they're decent human beings, and what's wrong with telling that story,
We need more. We need more of it. And so that kind of brings me to my last question for you. As you look at this project, you look at the journey of your career and where you've been in Hollywood, the shows you've been on. Do you see yourself, and if so, how so, going deeper into this family-friendly faith space?
Well, it's interesting. I just remembered what you had said earlier that I wanted to touch on. I mean, like I said, I didn't know what was going to happen, and I kind of went to this. I went to JC Films because I just wanted to continue to work and to make some money, any money, and I really hadn't thought about, like buying into the whole spiritual component of it. Just to be honest, I just wanted to work. But as the time has passed, as I've gotten to meet more of these people and spend time with these people, my wife said to me the other day, she said, maybe this is what you're supposed to be doing. this is the non-coincidence, and that, maybe your path is to make films that make people, that give people hope and make them feel better. And I mean, I may not be able to buy my Lamborghini or my helicopter, and that's okay. I mean, I've had the big house on the hill. I've had the cars, and I wasn't any happier. And so maybe, um, the truth is that, this is where I'm supposed to be. I mean, I guess I'm right where I'm supposed to be. This is part of the plan. So I continue. I hope to continue to make films, and hopefully they get better and better, and people will want to continue to watch.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing where God takes you next on the journey. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much, Billy. It was a pleasure talking to you, my friend.